Hello and welcome to this Learn to Read Music Treble Clef course. This tutorial will help you to read treble clef music. Instruments that often use the treble clef include trumpet, French horn, tenor horn and brass band instruments. Also the flute, clarinet, oboe, cor anglais and the violin, as well as many tuned percussion instruments. If you want to learn bass, alto or tenor clef instead, or as well as this course, then please just visit www.seanhumphreys.co.uk/resources. Before we look at pitch, we'll have a quick look at rhythm and how the notes are written. Understanding the different ways in which the notes are written will help to make things easier to read when we start to look at pitch later on. Notes are written differently to show how long they last for. The length of a note is measured in beats. And the best way to think of a beat is to think of a heartbeat. Hopefully, you have a heartbeat that has a regular and consistent pulse. And we can think of a beat as an individual heartbeat. The pulse, that's a number of regularly spaced beats, one after the other. A one-beat note is called a crotchet, or a quarter note. And a one-beat note is drawn with a stem, that's the line that goes up from the blob or the note head, and the note head is the coloured in circle or oval shape at the bottom. A two-beat note is called a minim, or a half note. And the two-beat note also has a stem, that's the line going up, and on this one, a two-beat note, the note head is not coloured in. A four-beat note is called a semibreve, or a whole note. And a four-beat note is drawn with no stem, and the note head, again, is not coloured in. So it looks a little bit like a half note or a minim, but it doesn't have a stem on it. Now in music, we read these different notes, one after the other. So when you see a line of crotchets or quarter notes, as you can see in the top line here, one after the other, you would think in your head the rhythm T, 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 T. So if our pulse was like this, each of those crotchets would last for one beat. T, 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 T. On the next one down, you can see we've got two crotchets, those are quarter notes, and one minim, or a half note. For the half note, you can think the word cheese. So the rhythm would be something like this. Here's our pulse. Here we go. T, T, cheese. Have another listen to that. There's our pulse. T, T, cheese. For the next one, we have one minim, or a half note, and two crotchets, or that's two quarter notes. For this one, you could just swap the rhythm around, think the word cheese, and then T, T, like this. There's the pulse. Here we go. Cheese, T, T. Have another listen, like this. There's our pulse. Cheese, T, T. For the next one down, we've got a crotchet, minim, followed by a crotchet, or if you prefer, quarter note, half note, with a quarter note at the end. For this, you could still think the same words, in this order, T, cheese, T. Here's our pulse. Goes something like this. T, cheese, T. Have another listen. T, cheese, T. And for the last one, it's two half notes, or two minims. You could think the word cheese twice. Sound a bit like this. Here's our pulse. Cheese, cheese. Have a go at clapping those through on your own, try different ones out, and see if you can come up with any other rhythms that might work. Now we've looked at rhythms, we can start looking at pitch. Now, these different note lengths are placed on a stave, and this will show how high or low they are. To see how high or low a note is, you look at the note head, and the stem, although it's important, doesn't tell you how high or low the note is. The higher the note is placed on the stave, the higher it will sound. The lower the note is placed on a stave, the lower it will sound. A stave is made up of 5 lines and 4 spaces. At the front of each stave is something called a clef. We are looking at the treble clef, and the treble clef will show you where the notes go. The treble clef is used for the higher notes, the bass clef is used for the lower notes, alto and tenor clefs are used for some instruments that are pitched in between the treble and the bass clef. Sometimes this is referred to as a G clef as well as a treble clef. When we draw notes on the stave, we either draw notes on the line or in a space. In the top example, you can see that this note is drawn on a line. This means that the line goes through the centre of the note head. In the bottom example, we say that this note is in a space. This means that the note head sits in between 2 lines of the stave, and a line doesn't go through the centre of the note head. Here is a picture of a stave. We can see the stave has 5 lines and 4 spaces. The 5 notes that go on the lines are E, G, B, D and F. To help you remember this, you can think every green bus drives fast. That's counting from the bottom line up to the top. To read the notes in the spaces, we can see that the letters spell the word face. So reading from the bottom space upwards, F, A, C and E. Here are the notes on the stave, starting from the lowest note up to the highest note. Notice that each one goes on a line, then space, then line, then space, and so on, rather like a ladder, and the higher up the stave you go, the higher the note will sound. So the first E that's written on the bottom line will sound lower than the E written in the top space. The F, the first F in the lowest space, will sound lower than the F written on the top line. Now obviously, there are more than just 9 notes in music, and sometimes we will want to play notes that are higher or lower than the stave. Only using notes that fit on the stave would mean that we'd only have the 9 notes. Notes can sit directly above or below the stave, and notes can also sit on their own lines above or below the stave. These little lines are called ledger lines. So if we look at the notes below the stave, you'll see that this goes down from D, then C, then B, then A. The C that is written has its own little line going through the centre of the note. B has a line just above the note head, and A has 2 ledger lines, and the note head sits on the second ledger line down. If we look at the notes above the stave, you can see that this moves from G, that sits directly on top of the top line of the stave. A has its own little line, B has a line that sits directly under the note head, and C sits on the top of the 2 ledger lines. This of course can extend further, and you can play higher and lower than these notes by adding more ledger lines as needed. This might seem all fairly straightforward, but there is one slight problem that you may come up against. Although we only use the first 7 letters of the alphabet, from A through to G, reading music takes practice. Although not necessarily lots of time. The aim is to remember where each of the notes go and to become very familiar with how things look. Reading music is a bit like learning a language, and it takes repetition. The best way to do this is to learn to play the notes on an instrument. If you don't have your own instrument, you can always download a piano app and learn a piano app on an iPad or a tablet or any other computer that you may have. Alternatively, you could go buy an instrument that you've always wanted to play. Stems can go up or down. It will depend on where the note head is placed on the stave. Generally speaking, all stems go up on the right hand side if the note head is below the middle line. All stems go down on the left hand side if the note head is above the middle line. The note B, which is on the middle line, can have a stem going up or down depending on what is before or after the note. So far, we've seen notes written semibreves or whole notes. These notes last for 4 beats or 4 counts each. A minim, or a half note, and a crotchet, or quarter note, would look like this, as you can see on the left hand side. Notice how they look different to semibreves or whole notes. We can see the notes written as minims, E, G, B, D, F, on the lines, and in the spaces, F, A, C, E, and also as crotchets. Have a go at naming the notes that appear over the next few slides. You will have only 5 seconds to work out the note before the answer appears. Aim to be as quick as you can, as the answer will only stay on the screen for 2 seconds before the next question arrives. Good luck! Hopefully you have a pencil and some paper ready. Here we go. Ready? Steady. Go! And relax. So, how did you do? How many did you get right? Don't worry about getting some wrong, because that's all part of the learning process. In fact, with a little bit of regular practice, you'll notice that you will be able to improve your accuracy and increase your speed. Try downloading the worksheets that go with this tutorial, and if you need any more, please visit www.seanhumphreys.co.uk for any more free resources. Good luck, and thanks for listening.